So I've talked in the last couple of talks about energy, that the world is made out of energy. And this is very, very important. And it's very important to take some time, if you have not come across this idea before, to sort of process the idea. Take a little bit of time. Be careful you don't reject it too quickly here, because it requires a certain shift in consciousness. And so the reason why it's so important to realize this is that it gives you a different perspective on your personal growth. It can help you overcome what we might call the disease of the modern world, which is instant gratification. And I have seen this over the 49 years I've been on the path. I've seen how so many people come in, they find, let's say it's a spiritual movement that has a spiritual teaching and a certain practice. But they find this. And the movement, of course, promises people that there's an end result, a higher state of consciousness. And people now go into it and saying, well, I want this, but I want it now. I want it in 5 minutes. I want it in 6 months. I want it in a few years. But they want it quickly. And I've seen over the years many people can become aware there's a path to a higher state of consciousness. They engage in it very eagerly. They make a great effort. But after a while they become disappointed because they didn't get the result they expected. At least not at the time they expected it. And this is really a big problem for many, many people. And HAP is, of course, not making that promise that you can reach a higher level of awareness in 5 minutes, or that it's simple. So it's very important that you expand your time horizon and cut yourself some slack, and give yourself some time. And in order to do this, it's necessary to think about, as I said, everything is made up of energy. So we have the material world. We have the physical body. The physical body is still energy. It's just energies that vibrate within a certain spectrum. But why does the body then seem solid to you? Well, because your senses, your physical senses, have been calibrated to see physical energy as solid matter. It's like your physical senses have put on these glasses, and now I see everything as purple. And the physical senses see matter as solid. They don't see that it's energy. We know matter is made of molecules, atoms, elementary particles that we often tend to see as little billiard balls zooming around. But scientists have actually proven that there are no solid particles, because you can always go beyond. And when you go beyond the particles, you reach a level of energy vibrations, energy waves. So what we can say is that the level of the physical body is a spectrum of energy that vibrates at the lowest level we have on Earth. Beyond that is the spectrum of higher energies, that's the emotional body, the emotional mind. Beyond that, the mental. Beyond that, the identity level. But if we go up to higher vibrations than the identity level, we go into what we can call the spiritual realm. Now, I know this sounds like traditional religion, and I have sort of avoided so far sounding like I'm teaching religion, because I'm really not teaching religion, certainly not a specific religion. But you have to realize that traditional views of heaven have been very tied to a specific culture and a specific time. You think back to Old Testament times and what they knew about the world at the time. They thought the Earth was a very small, flat planet that was the center of the universe. And God was right up there and intimately concerned with everything we did here on Earth. And that's, of course, a worldview that many people have moved away from, and that you probably have questioned, or you wouldn't be open to this. So what I'm trying to say here is that what we need to realize is there is a spiritual realm beyond the 4 levels of the material world. And we don't need to go into too much about what it's like, at least not at this point. We just need to know there are higher energetic vibrations there. And the reason why this is important is that we can realize that the entire material world originated from the spiritual realm. It sort of came out of the spiritual realm because the energies of the spiritual realm were lowered in vibration to form the material world. And what that means for us personally is we are not material beings. We did not come or were produced in the material universe. It's like scientific materialists are saying that your consciousness is exclusively the product of what happens in your brain, your neurons and how they are firing in your brain. That's what materialists would say. Well, as I've said before, if that was the case, no self-improvement is possible. Because the whole idea of materialism is your brain is the cause, your state of consciousness is the effect can't have any influence on the cause, therefore your mind cannot constantly change the way your neurons are firing, therefore you can't change your experience of life. Now if you believe this, obviously you wouldn't be watching this, but I'm just saying, it's very important to realize there is a spiritual realm beyond the material, and that everything in the material originated there, including us. So, you, as I said, you're not your physical body, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're not your sense of identity. So what are you? Well, you are this spiritual being that we can say is pure awareness, neutral awareness, because you're not the outer personality, you're not your sense of identity, your ethnicity, your sex, your race, this or that, and you're not your thoughts and feelings or your physical body. And it's important to realize that because that's really the only way that you can step outside of these subconscious selves, come to see the illusion and let them go. But beyond that, it's important to realize the conscious you is not all that you are. The conscious you is an extension of a being in the spiritual realm, which I'll call your higher self or your spiritual self. It's also called your I am presence, because it gives you a sense that I exist. So there is a part of you that exists in the spiritual realm. And the importance of this is, this I am presence, this spiritual self, it wanted to experience, let's step back. The spiritual self is not a perfect being that never changes. The spiritual self is a growing being. It's an evolving being, self-transcending being. And part of its growth process is that it wanted to interact with and experience the material realm, the 4 levels of the material realm. And that's why it sent you, as the conscious you, into physical embodiment. So in other words, you are an extension of the spiritual realm, or of the spiritual self, that is sent into embodiment to be in a physical body and to do the things you can do with the physical body and have the experiences you can have with the physical body. Your spiritual self couldn't do this because it's made up of the higher vibrations, so it can't descend in its totality. And therefore it sends that extension of you. And this gives you a whole different perspective of what I talked about with these subconscious selves. Because you see, it makes you realize, when you process this, that you started out as the conscious you were a neutral self. You really had no identity, no personality in relation to this world. Your identity was your spiritual self, which is a distinct individuality, but you had no sense of identity in relation to this world. But in order to descend through these levels, because there's a big difference in vibration between the spiritual realm and the physical here on earth. So in order to descend through these levels, you started at the 144th level of consciousness. And at the 144th level of consciousness, you took on a certain illusion, a certain sense of self, a certain subconscious self. And that illusion brought you, the conscious you, down to the 143rd level, where you could identify yourself as a being at that level. Then you took on another illusion to go to the 142nd level. And you kept doing that until you reached the 48th level of consciousness. So you started out your journey in the material world at the 48th level of consciousness. And the reason why it's important to realize this is that at the 48th level of consciousness, you have a certain intuitive sense that you are connected to something outside your own mind, outside your sense of self. In other words, you have taken on first the identity level of the mind, a certain sense of identity. You've taken on the mental level, certain thoughts. You've taken on the emotional level, certain feelings. But at the 48th level, even though you are seeing yourself and life through this filter of these identity, mental, emotional level, you have a sense that this is not all that you are. You haven't totally become this. You are still connected to something outside your identity, mental, emotional level. And that's your higher self. And that means you never really feel alone. You never really feel abandoned. I've met many people who feel like they were abandoned by God or they're all alone. But that's what I'm saying. About the 48th level, you don't feel completely alone because you have a sense that you're connected. You may not know consciously what it is, but you have a sense of connection. When you go below the 48th level, you lose that sense of connection. And that's why many people can feel abandoned. And they can have a self that feels abandoned and maybe even resents your higher self for sending you into this messy planet. So the reason why this is very, very important is that it gives you a different perspective on what life is and what the path to higher awareness is. Because you can realize that well, let's step back a little bit and say, you started out at the 48th level, or you had a certain sense of connection. And at that point you had two options. You had free will. You had a certain sense of self. So you could choose, number one, to focus on your sense of connection and say, what am I connected to? I don't see it clearly. It's like there's a haze. But I feel I'm connected to something. I want to expand that sense of connection. That means you start at the 48th level, you rise up to the 49th, 50th, and you keep going towards the 144th level. But the other option you have is you can go below the 48th level, but when you do this, you go into a fundamentally different state of consciousness, because now you lose the sense that you're connected to something. And you, all of a sudden, it's like you put on these, it's like, here I am, I have a sense I'm connected to something, but now I put on these glasses, I've lost my sense of connection, I'm a separate being. I'm in a separate world, I'm cut off, there may be a God up there, but he's way up there and has nothing to do with me. And other people are just there to take advantage of me, and the environment is hostile, everything is hostile, is what you suddenly see when you're when you go into separation. Now it's important to realize nothing wrong with going into separation as such. It's part of what you, the conscious you, can do on earth. It's part of the experience you can have on earth. But I'm just saying, you didn't have to. You didn't have to go into separation. But most of us did. It was, in a sense, almost inevitable, because in order to have the full experience of earth, we have to go into separation. But what I'm saying is, it was a choice we made. And because it was a choice we made, we can make a more aware choice that raises us above that choice, that raises us above separation. And as I'm saying, you have already done this, so you wouldn't be watching this. So you've already gone beyond the 48th level of consciousness, but becoming aware consciously what that means can help you walk the spiritual path, because now you realize the goal of raising my level of consciousness is actually to increase my sense of connection to my spiritual self. So that the closer you get to the 144th level of consciousness, the more connected you feel. And the more mastery you have over the identity, mental and emotional, and even the physical level. But it's important to realize that you did not descend to the 48th level of consciousness in your mother's womb in this lifetime. This happened a long time ago in previous lifetimes. And I know reincarnation can be somewhat of a tricky concept because it's a historical fact that the Catholic Church eradicated the concept of reincarnation from the Western world. So most of us, when we hear about reincarnation, we hear about it in an Eastern context. And Eastern religions, especially Hinduism, have a certain fatalistic view of reincarnation, where everything that happens to you in this life is determined by your past karma. And therefore it seems like you have very little choice. But as HAP is constantly saying, you always have a choice to transcend. It may be that certain aspects of your outer situation is the result of your past karma, but if you transcend the state of consciousness that caused you to create that karma, you will magnetize yourself to different circumstances. You see what I'm saying? Nothing is set in stone here. You always, it's like this. You could say one of the big illusions of humankind is that you can make a choice with your free will that takes away your free will, your ability to make different choices. But see, you can make a choice that limits you, yes. But you can never make a choice with your free will, yet you cannot undo by making a more aware choice with your free will. It's just a matter of raising your awareness, becoming more conscious of your options. So that's why I'm saying, as I started out saying, instant gratification is the curse of the modern age. We think we whip out this little piece of plastic and we're supposed to instantly get what we paid for. And in order to be successful on the path to higher awareness, you have to expand your time horizon. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to realize you, as a conscious being, originated a long time ago. And you've had a long time to experiment with what can be done here on earth and create these subconscious selves. And as I said, there's really a self for each level of consciousness. So you could say you start at the 144th level, you create a subconscious self, it takes you to the 143rd, and you keep going. But when you go below the 48th level, there's also still a certain self for each level. But at a specific level, it's still possible to create other selves at that level. So what I'm saying is, you have in past lifetimes created many subconscious selves. And you just can't expect that you can undo them all in a very short period of time. But what you can realize is that if you're open to the path in this lifetime, it's because you already started the path in past lifetimes, which means you've already overcome a lot of the subconscious selves that you had. And that means that it's very likely that in this lifetime, you can make tremendous progress, decisive progress, that takes you at least beyond the 96th level, but very possibly to the 144th level in one lifetime. And that's a tremendous achievement. It's a tremendous thing that you can have that much progress in this lifetime. But what I'm saying is, you just still can't expect that it's going to happen in 5 minutes or 6 months or a year or 10 years. You have to expand your time horizon and say, this is a lifetime commitment to raising my consciousness. And it's not that there is this carrot at the end of the path that is in wonderful state of consciousness, enlightenment, awakening, or whatever people talk about. Because every time you free yourself from a subconscious self, you will experience an improvement. Your life will improve. I can look back at the 49 years I've been on the path, and I can see that compared to where I started when I was 18 years old and where I am today in consciousness, it's an enormous distance. It's a big leap. But it's not like I'm only reaping benefits now, because I have been reaping benefits all along. Because, as I said, every time you overcome one self that limits you, you feel more free, you feel more at peace, you feel more that you can be yourself and be who you are. So the path has its own rewards. if you focus on that. But what I've seen people do is they become so focused on an end result, like this absolute wonderful state of enlightenment that they must reach, that they don't acknowledge the progress, the gradual progress they are making. And therefore for them it becomes all or nothing. It's like they're thinking, oh, am I awakened? Am I enlightened? If I'm not, then I'm a failure. Then the past doesn't work and I'm going to give up on the whole thing. I've seen people do this. And that's why I'm saying it's very, very important to have this expanding our time horizon. It's a lifetime commitment. It's a gradual process. It's not this instant awakening where suddenly you shift and you awaken. This is not what HAP teaches at all. HAP teaches a gradual systematic path, which by the way has been taught for thousands of years. The idea of instant awakening is largely an illusion. I've talked about this in some of my other videos where I have a playlist about non-duality where I talk about this. If you're interested in it, you can find it there. But what I'm saying is HAP teaches a gradual path that for each step you take, there's a reward. And when you have experienced that you have taken several steps and you've had the reward, and you have probably already done this in your life, then you can see that the path works, and so you just continue. And once in a while there'll be a bigger breakthrough where you will really feel like, wow, I really turned a corner now. But that's not really what's driving you. What's driving you is this constant, steady, gradual progress. And you can't really have that if you think that you came into being at the beginning of this lifetime and that you have never lived before. Because what will happen is that, you know, I've seen this over the years. I've seen people that didn't believe in reincarnation, but they started working on their psychology. And if you don't believe in reincarnation, what do you believe? You believe that my psychology must be the result of something that happened in my childhood. So here I have these people that don't believe in reincarnation. They go into their psychology, they use some tools, and they cover this very, very deep trauma. And now they're saying, but wait a minute, I had a relatively normal childhood. Nothing traumatic really happened in my childhood. Where did this come from? Well, it came from a past lifetime. It's the only logical explanation. And I had a fairly easy childhood in this lifetime, but I have still, as I worked on my psychology, uncovered some very, very deep traumas that came from being killed in war, for example, or being tortured, or various other things that there's just no basis for in this lifetime. So that's why I'm saying again, if you don't realize that you have existed before, that you have a long and complex history, and it will take some work to overcome it, then you set yourself up for failure, you set yourself up for disappointment, and that's of course not what HAP is designed. HAP is designed to give you a steady, gradual path that will produce results and that will lead you to an end goal.